Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I would like to call the District Advisory Building Committee meeting to order. Today is Thursday, January 20, 2022, and we are meeting via Zoom. I will take roll and start with co-chair, council member, Mark Diane.
Hello, Youssef, I'm present.
School board chair, Emily Figdor.
Here.
Councilor April Founder. School board Otto Russell Better. DAPC members, Sarah Thompson. Matthew Winch.
Hi, I'm here.
Jay Norris.
Here.
Abigail Fuller.
Here.
Paul Stevens.
Here.
We also have district staff, Javier Botana.
Hello.
Steven Stilvan.
He's muted, but he's here.
Douglas Sherwood. Is Douglas here?
No.
He'll be in though.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. Hi, Aura. Welcome to the meeting. We just have school board member Otto Russell Better join us. We will have CHA team, Jeff Birdbaum.
Good evening.
We have Ben Winchell.
Not here.
He's not joining.
No. Okay. Laura Jolly.
Good evening.
Mark Lee.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mark. Lisa Sawin.
Good evening.
Emily Wall.
Hello.
Hello. So we neglect to notify Councilor April of the meeting.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I did connect with Councilor Fournier today, and she does expect to be able to join us, but she's probably going to be not be able to join on camera, and she might not be able to join us for the full time. So I do expect her to join us. As Chair Youssef was about to say, we just informed her this afternoon about that her nomination was approved and about this meeting. So that's my fault and my apologies. And then I think it's Ms. Thompson who's joined us and not board member Russell Better, who I heard from as well, who's just running late and will join us in a little bit.
Okay. Member Sarah Thompson, my apology. I thought you were Aura. And thank you. Go ahead. And thank you, Chair Emily Figdor, for the update. I think we have everybody here. So I will start out with approval of the meeting minute from November 18, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any questions or changes on the meeting minutes of November 18, 2021? See none, please indicate whether you support approving the meeting minutes with a show of your hand. Thank you. I think the minutes approved unanimously with those who are here present. Tonight, we are going to talk about in our agenda, several agenda, permit status, project impact, and next step discussions. So we have significant delay and these delays are going to cause additional costs. And part of that is what we are going to be asking the DABC how to manage. So first, we want to learn and understand the causes, and so that we can start talk about the impact and additional work that we have to do. So please, if you have any questions, use your raise your hand feature in Zoom so that everybody gets the opportunity to speak. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent. Superintendent, please take from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Youssef, and thank you for taking on the leadership of the committee along with Councilor Dion. Look forward to working with you in this capacity. As you heard, Board Member Youssef walk through the agenda. That is, that's the framing that I would give to today's meeting. If you recall, at the last meeting we had talked about the fact that we had significant delays as a result of permitting issues, and that we would need to really understand what those delays, what the impact was. We did not have a meeting in December so that we would be able to gather all of the data. We're not quite there yet. So as Mr. Youssef said, we are focusing in on helping the DABC to understand what the costs are, but today we're really at the point where we can talk about the schedule impacts and the new work that was not in the original scope that has resulted from those permits. So that's what the bulk of the meeting is going to be today. And then, in the near future, so at our next meeting, we'll be in a position to also talk about the delays and the costs associated with the delays. So that's the missing piece that we don't have for today. And on our end, to walk us through that, both where we are with the permitting as well as those project impacts, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to Jeff to do that.
We actually, there's a PowerPoint that Harriman has that will lead us through this discussion.
Great. Lisa, Mark.
Very good. So thank you very much. We'll share the presentation, and it's a effort by both CHA and Harriman to kind of give everyone an update on where we are. So I will move us through. I think we've talked about what the agenda is, and I think we're through item 1, which was the introduction. I think by way of the roll call, I think we've got that, and approval of the minutes. So we'll move into permit status, and then we'll talk about the impacts as we know them to date of the scope of work, both from the permitting and anything we know about the schedule impacts as well. And so I believe the last time we all met, we had permits for everything but Presumpscot and we had the foundation permit and the portable permit, but we did not yet have the full building permit, and that was because there were updates being done because of the stretch code and the IECC, the International Energy Code, and so that has been finally received, the full building permit for Presumpscot. So we're happy to report that now all 3 schools are permitted to move forward fully for the general contractors with the construction. I'll pause for a moment. Okay. Sorry.
Yes, if anybody has question, we can raise hand use feature.
All right. Thank you, Chair Youssef. All right. So Jeff is going to give us kind of a little bit of a definition of what the contractors are putting in for changes of work and what definitions are around that. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
So when we give an update through the course of this evening, we're probably going to use terminology that we use day in and day out in the construction and development world. So we're trying to capture in these definitions to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So new work is basically defined as work that wasn't included in the bid set that was sent out as part of the request for proposal, also known as the RFP, to get the project cost from general contractors in the area. The bid set are the drawings, the design that outlays all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, the fire, life safety, the architectural, the programming areas. And that's how the costs are determined and leveled and then eventually contracted, negotiated, or not negotiated, but in this case, contracted. And then through the permitting process, or the way that a contract can change, it changes by way of design changes. Design changes can come from the owner side, or they can come through the permitting process. We don't have any programming and owner design changes. The project's been designed. And so the new work that has impacted the project by way of cost has come as a result of going through the permitting process. The permitting process does not necessarily mean that there were design misses or deficiencies. It means in some cases that the city has a different understanding of what the code calls for and how to apply that code, different from the architect and designers. And there is some going back and forth, and in a lot of cases, the city proves out their point or gets what they want. And so this is what we have for new work that's come about for all three schools through the actual permitting process. And these are some of the costs that we have. We actually have the cost and the breakdown for two of the schools, not for Reiki at the moment. New work can also come about as a result of unforeseen conditions. So when we're renovating in an existing building, we do not always know all the conditions until you start getting into the actual work. And so we call that new work as well for the unforeseen and unknown conditions. So the other component that impacts the cost here specifically as a result of the time it took to get the permit is a delay claim. And so when we go out to bid with the drawings, there's also a schedule that's set forth, a schedule of which has been discussed with the Portland Public Schools, the principals. It also speaks to phasing and how certain components of the project can be done and completed within certain timeframes during the school year. There are also items called general conditions and general requirements that the contractor puts a value in their number when they submit and respond to the RFP. General conditions speak to the labor that the contractor incurs in-house, their own people, the project manager, the on-site superintendent, the project engineer, project accountant, project administration, project executive. General requirements speak to the rental of the trailer, the fencing, life safety issues, temporary barriers, temporary lighting. And so when we have a delay claim, so we have a schedule, right? And the schedule calls for 13 months to complete a project. That's what it was for Presumpscot. And now as a result of the permitting and going into the winter and the school year there is a claim for a delay. Presumpscot case, 4.5 months. And the contractor puts forth their costs associated with that delay, which includes general conditions, an extension of the schedule, if you will, to pay their staff, and general requirements, the additional time for rental of trailers or fencing or equipment. And the submarket also potentially can have a delay claim. And so this is what a delay claim is, and we'll speak about that a little bit more later. I got ahead of myself. I addressed general conditions. Okay. Okay, got it. So these numbers here represent the new works that have come about as a result of the permit comments. And I will defer to Harriman to speak to the new works at a high level for each of the schools. But this is a good representation of where we believe we are at, specifically for Presumpscot and Longfellow, because we've received the actual backup. When I say backup, the actual documentation from the subcontractors. And in some cases, it's lump sum, meaning they just gave us a number. But what we're asking for when we go through the vetting process is we'd like to see a breakdown of labor and materials. And so we are currently still vetting these numbers and responding back to the general contractor with our inquiries and questioning numbers that are put forth. Reiki, and a brief comment on that is that we do not have any backup yet. We just have a narrative, and we are waiting for the information. So at the moment, we are looking at a 4 month. So let me just back up. When we speak to a schedule delay, there's a beginning and then there's an end of a project. And then in the middle of the project are phases. You complete certain components of the scope of work and move to the next. And those phases have been, from the original schedule, created in coordination with the schools and their schedules and what they need in terms of space in classrooms. And when you look at a delay, it's not necessarily a delay from and the impact from within that actual original schedule, but it's actually to the end of the schedule. And so we have a 4 month impact to Longfellow by way of the original completion date to the new completion date. But the schedule, which is currently still being vetted, requires some further discussion regarding the phases and the changes in the phases and the work within those phases that now may potentially is overlapping with one another, whereas before it may have been done sequential. But at the end of the day, the total impact to the project in terms of its delivery is 4 months. I think it's important to note that 1 month in summer 2004 is the removal of the modulars and then some site work, asphalt work, landscaping that needs to get done. But the actual turnover to the school for the children in their new classrooms is slated for December 2023. I'm going to skip to Presumpscot. We have a delay of Presumpscot. It was originally to be completed in August of this year. The schedule currently calls for January 11th, 2023. We'll be working with the general contractor, and they've committed to hit the Christmas break timeframe to deliver the project. We feel it is very achievable to do so. And for Reiki,
Jeff,
sorry.
Would you mind to pose you
go ahead.
Question from Emily Figdor?
Thank you, Chair. I might have just cut you off, Jeff, and my apologies, but the lack of information from Reiki is really troubling to me. When did we get the Reiki permit? In
Mid-November.
Yeah, November.
Mid to third week of November, correct?
So this is like 6 weeks later? Is it typical to not have received this information over such a extended time period? And what's our expectation in terms of when we will get the documentation from them that you're saying we haven't received?
Very good questions. Hardy Pond has stated that their subcontractor base is not providing them or responding to them in a timely manner to get them the information. They have provided us 2 schedule options, of which we've asked to get on the call and review those options. I believe, right, Laura, the call is now tomorrow, to take us through their 2 scheduling options. The scheduling options include, as I understand it, what's called acceleration or recovery of time, which appears to be having a great impact to the delay portion of the claim. And so we want to review their 2 options to understand what they're thinking. And also, we just want a straight up understanding of what the actual schedule is without any recovery or acceleration to determine what the costs are on a straight month-by-month delay, if you will, and then how we can make up time from there. It is not typical, in my opinion, that we are waiting this long at this point not to have this information. I think it's important to note that for all 3 contractors, we initiated discussions well in advance of the issuance of the permit in November to start preparing for what their schedules impacts were going to be. And so that it can be updated at the time that the permit is issued, so we wouldn't be delayed, and we'll call it this type of administration. So it's more than just November at the issuance of the permit. It's prior to then that we had multiple discussions. So yes, it is concerning, and we're trying to work through it.
And I see that Councillor Diane has his hand up, but just to follow up, 2 questions. Is the fact that the phone call is scheduled tomorrow suggestive of maybe we're making progress and we'll see all the documentation? And then 2, what tools do we have to move them forward?
I don't believe we'll have the backup or additional information tomorrow in terms of substantiation of the cost. The purpose of tomorrow's call is to take us through what their schedule options are, so we can have an understanding of what they're thinking. Work is proceeding. We've issued what's called a Constructive Change Directive the week before last, I believe, to all 3 contractors. A Constructive Change Directive is basically a written document pursuant to some provisions within the agreement that basically says that the contractors to move forward with the scope of the works without having a signed off change order or without having an agreed to schedule extension or delay. There are some time frame protections and expectations that are set forth within the agreement. And those have not expired yet by way of the CCD. And then there are further steps that can be taken thereafter. But at this point, we are still working and hopeful that Hardy Pond subs will respond to them in a more timely manner, and then we can get a little bit more progress on Reiki.
And last question, and I'm sorry to take up so much of the time, but what is the time frame in that that order that that they're operating under now? When does it expire?
So I don't have the agreement in front of me, but I believe they have 21 days from the date of the CD issuance to provide all the backup documentation. We then have 7 days, 5 or 7 days to review and respond. And then there's another 10-day type of period with respect to those costs. I mean, we are obviously trying to work in a much more expedient manner than that. We feel with Reiki, there's just a little bit more effort. There is more effort that is needed to hopefully help them along.
Was that Chair Victor?
That's it. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Councilor Mark Diane, you can go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll try to build upon what Chair Figdor was talking about. Jeff, I want to say at the onset, I appreciate the effort you and your team have done in preparing for tonight's meeting by addressing contract language, contractor terms. I think it helps us evaluate as non-practitioners the activities that's going on for you and the Harriman team in managing this project. And I think it would be helpful in light of what Chair Figdor raised. I think the public that would look at this meeting needs to understand that whether it's schedule or new work costs or delays and the costs arising from those events, that whatever numbers are produced by the contractors are not accepted on its face, that your team is charged with contesting those numbers or schedule and trying to arrive at an agreed upon outcome. And that's necessarily what vetting is. Would that be helpful if you could talk about that for just a moment?
I'm happy to do so. I'll start with Presumpscot because we've made the most progress with Longfellow shortly following. So we get a claim, and that claim provides for the contractor's costs that they would like to get. And so what we do is we look at that claim, and we first need to understand that how the number is generated. And so we ask for backup. We ask for a breakdown. So for Presumpscot, for example, originally the delay claim, I'm just going to give the numbers because I feel comfortable doing so, came in originally at $120,000 without any backup. So the backup means how much is the superintendent per hour, per day, per week? How much is the project manager and accountant? What are the general requirement breaks down? What is the cost for your trailer, the cost for equipment, the cost for fencing? And so then we get that backup, and then we evaluate, well, is this 100% applicable to 100% of the time? Meaning we know that we need a superintendent. That's the person that's on site, representing the general contractor and driving all the subs. We need them 100% of the time. Project manager, generally you need 100% of the time. Project executive, you don't need them 100% of the time. Maybe you only need them 50% of the time. And the original contract and the numbers that are set forth actually do not give us that breakdown. It just gives us a number, and it gets amortized evenly across the construction period, meaning if we have 10 months worth of construction and $100,000 in general conditions, they bill $10,000 a month. That's the level of backup that we actually have at the original contract inception. But in cases of change orders, in this case, schedule impacts and delay claims, we are allowed to ask for the backup. And then we have a discussion as to, well, is it really $120,000? We believe, based upon our analysis and assessment, it's X number of dollars. And so the contractor then goes back, re-looks at the schedule, re-looks at the numbers, and they came back to us at a $94,000 number. And they also agreed not to charge for the time that goes beyond December 2022, because we do have that 11-day period and there is a project closeout. We also had a discussion regarding the fee. So there is a overhead and profit, a fee that the contractor is allowed to apply to any change order, to any cost that the subcontractor gives, to any additional cost that is submitted by a contractor by way of claim. So the $95,000 was susceptible to a fee. The original proposal applied a 20% fee on top of the general conditions. And so we had to have a discussion with them as to that being quite excessive. They came back and said, well, we believe what is reasonable, which the contract has one quick statement that they have the right to apply a reasonable, mutually agreeable fee. So they thought reasonable was defined by the Maine General Bureau of Services, and they gave me a paragraph of general conditions somewhere online. And so I looked that up, and what it is online are general forms and templates for use and reference through the course of a project for end users to use in to put in contract terms and other type of documents. It's not code and it's not law. It also says that the contractor may, in this language, not charge exceeding 20% and may charge up to 20%. So we were able to successfully negotiate with them. Their statement of values showed a 5% fee, which is their profit. And we felt that was reasonable because that was in line with what is in their statement of values. We then agreed to a 5% overhead, and then a 1.75% bond is applicable to that. So a total of 11.75%. Now, it's important to note that the subcontractors also have a right to charge up to 20% and on their own in-house work, and up to 10% on their subcontractors. They're called subcontractor tiers. So you can imagine if one GC charges 20%, and then they have the right to, and then they charge 20% on top of their GC, or in this case, 10%, excuse me, it's 30% markup that flows to the owner. So we further negotiated with them that for purposes of this schedule delay claim and the new works associated with the permitting process, the maximum flow through exposure to the owner would be 25%, meaning 11.75% goes to Hardy Pond, Great Falls, as I explained, and then the subcontractors for overhead and profit cannot exceed 13.25%. And for future change orders, the total flow through to the owner cannot exceed 20%. So it's 11.75% to Great Falls, and then 8.25% to the subs. If Great Falls wants to give them more money, they may do so. These are the same conversations that we had with Longfellow when we started our initial vetting of the subcontractor backup, and the same discussion we had with them with the fee, and we are expecting tomorrow from Blaine Casey the updated general conditions and general requirements. That claim came in a lot more than what we had expected, and we had a very, what I thought, productive and reasonable conversation with them last week about it. So we don't take the information at face value. We dig down into it. We have it backed up, and before we present anything to the Portland Public Schools for their sign off, we want to know that it's reasonable and it's defensible and it's appropriate and in line.
Councilor Dyer, if you have more questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that account, Jeff, and I think it's important for the committee and those that might listen in or review this record that the vetting process is an opportunity for you to challenge, audit, and negotiate sometimes aggregate sums from the contractor, their understanding of what the terms of the contract might mean, and it's often in their favor, and your job is to push back on that. And if I understand you clearly in your final commentary that it doesn't serve the purpose of the school or this committee to have comments on a sum until you've had an opportunity to hammer it to the best possible position in light of the presentation by the contractors. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Diane. I see Paul Stephen has also a question. Please go ahead, Paul. You are muted.
Yes, Jeff, at what point in time do you perhaps make a decision to ask the contractor or subcontractor to go on a time and materials basis if you can't agree upon a sum?
I am not a proponent of time and materials, especially when we have a known scope and well-defined coordinated drawings that the subcontractor base and the general contractor can give us solid numbers. We are proceeding on a constructive change directive, which tells them that they need to proceed with that actual scope, and they are obligated contractually to provide us those actual numbers. In the event that we cannot agree to those numbers, there is a process in the contract that speaks to what's called the initial decision maker, which is the architect of record, in this case, Harriman, and there's a whole process in that regards. But at the moment, they are proceeding with work. It is not on T&M. We are fully expecting to have numbers provided to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions? I don't see. Please stop me if I don't see your hand raised. Jeff, thank you, and you can go ahead the rest of your presentation, please. Actually, I see hand. Yes, I see hand. Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Botan.
Before we move into the next meetings, I guess a couple things I want to go back. One is on go back to the one about the new work. Can you provide some details on what that new work is? I mean, those are some fairly significant numbers. Can you help us understand what is the new work that we're going to have to pay all this money for?
Surely. In that respect, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Good evening. So in regards to the new work, the Longfellow Elementary, the new work was a process of reviewing comments with the city on the permit comments they had in pertaining to the plumbing fixture count and the way to which there was a difference of interpretation on that. And ultimately, we arrived at replacing in kind some fixtures, which ultimately was additional fixtures beyond what was in the original contract documents. And so that value there is for those fixtures and partitions, as well as a credit for reduction in plumbing work. So it's kind of a high level on Longfellow. We did just receive that number, so that is still being, to Jeff's point, reviewed and vetted. And so that is pretty much what has just come through. Reiki, So those changes for Reiki also were part of the permit review process. Some of them were pertaining to the conversation back and forth on firewalls with the city. So part of what is owed to the project is a credit for the firewall removal. The other items on Reiki also came down to difference of interpretation of plumbing fixtures, and ultimately same solution to where we were replacing in kind. So there was an increase in fixture count. The other charge, which makes up the majority of the dollar amount, is a difference of interpretation around the opening in the floor on the second floor. The city wanted to see that enclosed. And so ultimately that led to having fire-rated walls around the enclosure, fire shutters, fire doors, and some reworking of mechanical designs and systems. So essentially that is what that dollar value is representing. And is being reviewed and requesting additional backup. The other one is Presumpscot, and that is mostly from the IECC code, stretch code, and some of the toilet fixture count interpretation and reworking as well. And I think we have some, Mark, I think there's a summary slide that we had created that's probably at the end of the presentation. It'll kind of...
No, but I think that's what I was gonna ask, if we could get for the committee something that details the additional work. So maybe just send a revised deck that I can attach to the board docs. That would be helpful.
Perfect. Yep.
All right.
Do that.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Are you all set?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Superintendent. I see Aura Russell, Member Aura Russell. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Lisa, could you just clarify under Longfellow with the 46,000 revised, what that means?
So originally in your PowerPoint, when we make changes, we try to indicate what has been changed. So the 150,000 was a estimate as to where that may come in. And we just received the actual numbers today, and that is 46,326. So that is what that means.
So I'm sorry. So it was 150, and then I'm still.
It was a placeholder of 150,000, and until we had the actual number, and so the actual number for that was the because we did not have a cost from the contractor, and so we do now as of today, and that's the 46,326. So it is not 150,000.
Oh, okay. So that is. So that is today.
That is what they have presented to us, not necessarily what has been accepted.
Okay. Thank you.
That's not. That's sorry. That's just to clarify, Lisa. That I believe that's PR 10, right?
For Longfellow.
Yeah. Let me provide a little more color. The 150, this $46,000 is rolling up into the 150. The 150 accounts for there are works that are associated with the delay claim it's not the actual general conditions, but some other general requirements and other scope of work. So this 150 is still very real. But we're trying to vet it down.
Thank you, Member Otto Russell.
Can I just follow that up real
Sure.
quick? So what is the 46 then?
46, which just came through today, and I haven't had a chance to fully review it, but it was directly related to the bathrooms. If you recall the issue, or Lisa just had mentioned regarding the understanding of applicable plumbing code and how it relates to egress versus occupancy. So this is the 46 includes removal of some scope of redoing the bathrooms and putting in new scope of replacement of the actual plumbing fixtures and just doing paint and flooring repairs or replacement.
But then to Board Member Russell Better's question, that 150 is not replaced by 46, but 46 is a portion of what could be up to 150.
That's correct. The 46 includes the recent permit comments that came about towards the end, but there were other permit comments that came out prior to then that pricing requests were submitted to Longfellow.
All right. Thank you. I see a hand raised by Matthew Winch. Please go ahead, Matthew.
So, two questions. I'm still trying to get my head around the explanations. New work costs do or do not include delay claims.
Does not.
So what we're looking at is new work costs are one subset of monies, and there's still an adder, or there should be maybe a second page that says delay claim costs. Is that an accurate way to look at this, Jeff?
Yes.
So here we are, quite a long time since our last meeting, quite a long time since folks have been able to distill all this on the construction side. And really what I'm coming away with tonight is we still really frankly have zero idea of what the delay costs and new work costs are going to be.
We actually have a submitted claim from Longfellow and Presumpscot. Presumpscot is near conclusion based upon final negotiations earlier this week. So for Presumpscot, it's the 137. We're still vetting for the subcontractor numbers, plus $95,000, which is the general conditions portion of the delay. The numbers for Longfellow came in extraordinarily high, which we did not agree with. And I cannot have a discussion with the general contractor or begin to negotiate until the numbers are actually in what we believe to be in an appropriate factual place, meaning reasonable and in line with the delay and the numbers and the data that we actually have to be able to respond to and analyze those numbers. We did have subcontractor backup with them, but a lot of it was lump sum. There was some duplication. So that's why that number is not on here. And I didn't want to mix and match. And we felt that putting those numbers on here would create further confusion and also it's all the same subcontractors for the most part, interestingly enough, for the three schools. And I didn't want to get into any details regarding the delay claims for each one of the schools. But so we know where we're at for Presumpscot, and we have a good idea of where we're going to end for Longfellow.
But we still don't have numbers that you're willing to share with us.
I believe it would compromise. I want to share with you, but in this forum, I believe it would compromise our position in our discussions and negotiation with the contractor, and then hence the contractor's discussions with their subbase.
Yeah. So I guess the simple answer to my question is yes, all this time has gone by and we still don't have anything resolved.
We do not have conclusion. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Any other questions for Jeff and the team?
I guess,
Yes.
maybe that's the next meeting's portion of this, but I think, all the way back to Ms. Figdor's question, when can we expect, to actually have all of that is, obviously an appropriate question given, where we are right now and the issues that Matthew raised and so on. So when, we didn't have a meeting in December because we needed to spend the time getting ourselves together for the January meeting. And here we are at the January meeting and we're still not fully together. So is it fair to say that it'll be at the February meeting?
So for Presumpscot and Longfellow, we expect to have resolution by the end of the month. At Presumpscot, we have some final paperwork from them. I can't tell you for Reiki. I can't speak for them, and it is not without effort from this entire team to try to get information from them. We've offered them our help. This call tomorrow has taken 10 days to get to this, to get a call, to review everything. So I can't speak for Reiki that we're going to have an answer by February. We're at the woe and the whim of the contractor. There are other protections pursuant to the contract that we can take forth, but it's not good for anybody. So it's just, we're pushing them as best as we can. We are in direct contact with the president and the owner of Reiki. It's a small family business. She understands the urgency. We don't quite understand or comprehend why their sub-base, a number of the same subcontractors as the other two schools, are not responding to them or not giving them numbers. Or maybe they have the numbers and they're not sharing them with us. I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Botan, if you are all set, we have hand raised by Chair Figdor. Please go ahead, Chair Figdor.
I'm wondering if there's, I'm just going to put this on the table. Is there any way we can put some political pressure on them, on Hardy Pond, by just publicly acknowledging what's happening? Because this is a project that the community is so invested in. And, I was on a PTO call last night with a Reiki PTO and one of the lead teachers at Reiki, and just hearing how the Reiki lead teacher was talking about, not knowing the phasing and what that was causing in terms of, the second grade students staying in the modulars and not know, a lot, the uncertainty was, took up a big portion of the conversation. And I know that's because of the challenges that it's posing. So back to my initial question is, is there some, by offering some transparency about what's happening in the delays, is there any way to bring that pressure to bear?
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question. I would think anyone with the type of political ties or within the city should feel free to reach out to the president of Reiki and express their concerns. We have certainly done so. I know Javier or Steve has done as well.
I guess I don't think it. I know that you framed it as political pressure. I don't think that is the correct framing for this. It's you're talking about public pressure, public outcry, going to the media. That's not political. That is, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know And I'm honestly, going to turn to you again, Jeff, and to Harriman, to Steve, to our, the experts in this arena to help us understand what recourse do we really have. I mean, my mind goes to, is this something that we need to ask our attorneys to engage in? And I know, Jeff, from your previous comment that you said, that doesn't do any, that the pressure piece or whatever doesn't do anybody, exercising the contract provisions doesn't do anybody any good. But, sitting here not being able to know what we're facing, because ultimately, whatever these numbers are and they add up to, they're going to come from something. And so, that's what this group is here to do, is to help us figure out, okay, so if this is the total, what are the things that we're going to do differently in order to be able to come up with that money? So I'm looking to you guys. Does it make sense to go to the media? I mean, this is a public meeting. People are going to, potentially, I don't know if we're on Facebook today, but we could be on Facebook with, many people watching this. And so they're going to, that this is already public. So what else is it that we can do that would be productive?
So,
can I speak here for a moment? Our relationship with Hardy Pond through the YSEF project was an experience. And we all know the outcome of that construction, and the school is being used and it's new. I have optimism that we can come to an agreement with Hardy Pond, Deirdre, and reasonable time here. What I feel to be the problem with Hardy Pond and recovering these numbers from their subs now is that the delay was initiated by us by stopping the work in the project. And their recalculations are coming from a standpoint of us not allowing them to work on the project. So that, therefore, is the delay. I think that the complexity of the phasing with Hardy Pond can be worked out in our negotiation, but clearly it's not that they're being, in my opinion, and in my negotiation and talking with Deirdre and Hardy Pond, that would be the case moving forward. It's a deadline that they're striving to meet for us, and whether I have full confidence we'll have it by February, but I feel that we have a 80% chance of having it by February. But that's the position we're in. We stopped the construction. That is the delay. And by contract, that's where we stand. So keeping this professionally vetted and understood to be what the delay, costs, and responsibility of payment by who and when is what we're trying to get to.
Right, but Steve, can you elaborate on the, we stopped work, but this isn't an issue of whether we stopped work. We've had the permit since November. And, it isn't an issue of whether we agree, and that's why we're going to have delay claims. But now that's we're having another delay in getting the delay claims.
When we told them to stop working on that project prior to the permits being issued, is extending the only thing that matters is the termination date of the project, the schedule. So they're backfilling, trying to find out, as Jeff just explained, Javier, the subs cost, their costs, general conditions. So you're right, we're speaking the same language, but we're trying to get these numbers negotiated with these contractors, and in particular, Hardy Pond, not in public. When we have a public number, we will then show our vetting of the numbers, and this is how these numbers were brought forward.
I think,
right.
Go ahead, Jeff. Was it?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Youssef. I was just going to add that I think, we're sort of, I think, a little bit between Steve's optimism and Jeff's frustration And I think right now work is still ongoing. And I think we're not at a point yet. I don't think that we feel like we've exhausted all options to get the information from Hardy Pond. I think when we get to that point of feeling like there's a lack of responsiveness to the point where it's impeding the ability of the work to get done, then I think we'll definitely look at recourse. And there are contractual ways that we can look to see how we can move forward. But I think right now we're I think doing everything we can to work to resolve getting the pricing, and so that we can get things back on track like we have and or are nearly at the point of that with the other two school projects.
All right. We have three members. We will go first, Jay Norris, and Matthew, and then Sarah. Go ahead, Jay, please.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff, I'm just curious. I heard your frustration with regarding the contractors and the lack of communication. When is the last time you guys held a sort of, all hands meeting of all the stakeholders? Do you hold those types of meetings, and when's the last time that took place?
To clarify, Przumska and Longfellow contractors have been responsive and delivering relatively on schedule their commitments as we have those discussions with them. There is a weekly OAC meeting with all hands on deck, which includes OAC stands for owner, architect, and contractor. And then specific to these delay claims and new works, we ask for calls throughout the week to discuss the specific issues at hand. So for Przumska, we had all hands on call on Monday. We had one last week with them, specific to the delay claim and the cost. Blaine Casey, we last had a call with them last week, separate from the OAC meeting. And we were expecting their backup on Tuesday, and then again yesterday. And now we are told today we got the $46,000 portion, and we're told we're getting the rest of the general conditions and general requirements revised numbers tomorrow.
But again, are these meetings, are they taking place regularly, and are all stakeholders involved? Hardy Pond, the contractors for the schools, is that a regular occurrence? And
yes.
Is there a time in recent past where everyone has had a designate at one of those meetings?
Yes, the owner architect contractor meeting is that meeting on a weekly basis, set and Laura can tell us the schedule, but it's set on a specific day and a specific time for each week that everyone attends, all stakeholders.
Are there, this might be a question for Lisa, since she's I guess the project manager still, but are there notes to those meetings, agendas, notes, minutes that maybe the Board of Education, either our chairs or the superintendent or the board might be privy to, might be able to review from time to time to maybe answer some of the questions that we have at these meetings?
There are contractor meeting minutes for each of those meetings that are done on a weekly basis.
And those would be available to the board, to the Board of Education, or to the superintendent?
The superintendent has access to those, correct?
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. We will go to member Matthew Winch. Go ahead, Matthew. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just tracking back to Emily's question. From my point of view, I see this as, you had the opportunity to sort of, prior to these delay claims with respect to the permitting process, you had the opportunity in the full set of drawings to have your hard and fast hard bid price. And now, unfortunately, due to the delays and due to the added work as a result of the permitting process, you're somewhat building the landing gear as you're flying the plane, and you're somewhat at the mercy of the individuals that are pricing this work. So you're not in a very strong negotiating position. And it seems to me that CHA is doing a very good job trying to work the problem along with Harriman and trying to pressure a contractor in any way publicly or in a way that they would see it as being public is only going to be detrimental to the efforts to get this priced in a reasonable way, because you truly are in a negotiating phase right now. And if they were painted in a negative light on in the news media or in some other way, you're doing more harm than good, I feel.
And thank you for making that comment. And I would just say, with respect to Reiki specifically, they've been nothing but professional. There's no issue in that regards. It's just an issue of achieving their deliverables that they come up with. So we are trying to work with them, and yes, we are frustrated, but we still feel that there's time and room to be able to work it out with them. But I think it's important to note they've been professional, and all three of the contractors have been professional.
Thank you, Matthew. Now we're going, Member Sarah Thompson. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. In listening to all of this, and I think that having been involved with this for so long, it's very, very concerning to see where we are still. It just seems as though, and I'm really concerned how we explain more and more to the taxpayers and money going to all of these additional fees. It seems like we're spending money, but we're not making a lot of progress, and we only have a set amount of money. So that kind of has me very concerned. We seem to be dancing around a lot and not making great strides. I agree with Matthew that it seems, if I was to look at this, we seem very weak and not in a strong position. And I don't like that at all. I think of it from the standpoint of that the contractors seem to have the upper hand, and we're their employer technically for this project. And it seems as though we're continually at the mercy. So I would, in my opinion, and again, what for it's worth, is while we don't take any recourse necessarily now, and we allow the negotiations to take place and continue in a nice effort. But I think at the same time, the school department should consult with our legal department on our rights as the employer and or the ones that have hired the contractors. It just seems as though we're not going to have much money left to do much of anything if we keep paying all these fees. And then it almost seems to me like we're going to be in a deficit, that we'll be owing money that we don't even have. So I hear everybody's frustrations. I agree with it. And we continue to have these calls and meetings. And I just don't see the progress. And I don't mean that as a slam to Harriman or to Steve. I know all of you work very, very hard, but I am concerned that we seem to have no negotiating power here whatsoever. So that's my 2 cents. But again, I don't want us to be at a deficit of owing money that the taxpayers don't have. We only have so much money. And it seems as though we're going to have to go back to the city council. We're going to have to go back to somebody to say, we need more money because of X, Y, and Z. So I don't know how others on the committee that have been on the committee for a long time feel about this. I know Matthew and Jess Marino have been involved about as long as I have, as well as Emily Figdor. And this is really, really frustrating. I don't know, Superintendent, you must be beyond frustrated, I guess.
We do not have the option of going back to anyone to get additional money.
Right.
That's been very clear to us from the very beginning. So, you're right. I am frustrated. And, I also want to temper that frustration with, the fact that the projects are underway, that, with the permits in place, and even while the permit was still being worked through, the work was continuing by and large, not, entirely. I am concerned that, to your point, that there are very real costs associated with this that we need to identify, because there are project reserves, there are contingencies built into the budget for each of those projects. And, at some point, we need to be able to look at what these numbers are against those contingencies and reserves and determine whether there is enough money. And if not, again, there is no additional, we're not having a bake sale, we're not having another referendum. We're having to figure out what scope is reduced in these projects, something that we've done throughout and we will need to continue to do. And so my frustration is more about the fact that, in November, we said, let's not have this conversation in December because we need the time to be able to get all this stuff done. And, we will do that in January. And here in January, it's not as close as we need it to be. So that's my frustration and, something that, we're going to need to work through and figure out how we bring this to you in February. I don't want us to be panicked about where we are with the projects because, again, 3 projects have been bid, the 3 projects are underway. And, by and large, there were delays, as, Steve mentioned, at times that projects were stalled because we were waiting for aspects of the permit. But, those projects are progressing. And we know, next slide is what we think the delays are. I don't know about all of you, but, I can live with those delays of 4 months, 5 months, things along those lines that I see there. But, I'm concerned back at the previous slide that that's just a portion of the costs. We don't know where the other portion of the costs are. And until we know all of that picture, we can't really have the conversation that this group is here to have, which is, okay, where do we get the money to do this? Is there enough in contingencies? Is it borrowing from one contingency to cover another's? Those are the conversations that this group needs to have, and we can't have it until we have all of these amounts, solid, vetted, and in front of you in true form.
So I guess, Superintendent, my frustration is exactly, I guess you summed it up much better than I. So thank you. But it's just to your point of the continual add-on of fees and this and that. And so I know we have contingencies. I know we have these other things, and I don't want to discount the progress that has been made. But I'm just really concerned that at the end of the day, we're going to have to cut way back and we won't have, we'll owe money that we don't have. So I don't know. That's just my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Sarah Thompson. I do see another hand. Chair Emily Figdor, go ahead, please.
I just want to caution us with suggesting that we won't be able to complete these projects before we actually have any information. I think based on some of the raw numbers and the contingency, it's going to be tight, but I am still very optimistic. We're going to get these projects done as intended. And until we have information that suggests that we can't, and that we have to scale them back in some ways, let's not suggest otherwise. There's these projects the construction is underway. Our school communities are rallying around making school work through the construction. It's a challenge for everyone, for the staff, for the students, and so let's really be focused on getting the projects done as intended.
You should know that our agenda and our MO is to complete these projects as designed and intended. And we are working on understanding scenarios, worst case and best case, and looking at where the projects, the shortfall, if any, would be funded from. But the full intention of this entire group, I speak from the consultant side, is to complete these projects as designed and intended.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Well said. And I think there's also a lot of work that the contractors are doing. And so I think, there is good progress being made on moving the projects forward. So
I'll just say that I went running this morning at 5:55 in the hour of 5:00 a.m. And there were workers out there working on the Reiki building. So I was surprised to see them. Perhaps by the time I got to Reiki, it might have been 6:15. Anyway, it was early. They were out there working hard.
Thank you, Chair Figder, and thank you, Jeff, Mike, Stephen, and Lisa. Any other questions for the team before we go ahead the rest of the presentation? I don't see none. Jeff, you can go ahead and we will stop you when we have questions. Thank you.
So I'll just wrap it up. I think right now we have a scheduled BLAC meeting in a week's time, and that's a combined now BLAC. And so it's to bring them up to speed with the same information that we presented to you this evening. We have our next scheduled DABC meeting in a month's time, February 17th. I think we all understand that we're working diligently many times a day, many days a week to try to resolve all of these unknown cost issues at this point in time, to be able to present the information so that you folks have the information to make sound decisions from. So I know that, again, CHA and Harriman and Steve Stilfen and his team are working extremely hard in concert to get that to happen. So.
Can I just piggyback on something that Mark said? I know that the board members are aware of the fact that the Board of Education approved a consolidation proposal for the building level advisory committees, where we've previously had one for each of the projects. We are in the process of consolidating them. The board actually approved the community members at its meeting on Tuesday. And so for that meeting next week, it will be the new reconstituted building level advisory committee. It will have, a single set of co-chairs, one from the council, one from the school board, and, an additional two board members and an additional city councilor, and then every community member that expressed an interest in continuing on those on the consolidated BLAC will be a member of that. So I believe we have at least three, if not four, from each of those BLACs, and then there will also be staff members, which I appoint, and I have two out of the three schools that have given me their names. So that's what we will be looking at next week. So going forward, it'll be a single BLAC, that will be advising this group on specific aspects of the school projects. So.
And just so folks know, the co-chairs of the new district-wide BLAC are Board Member Laura Russell Better and Councillor Pius Ali.
And I just want to, while we're on the slide dates, I don't, the school calendars and vacation weeks, I don't know how that impacts our February meetings.
It would impact the BLAC meeting. It does not impact the ABC meeting. ABC.
I do have a hand, Otto Russell, member Otto Russell. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the time for BLAC meetings because I haven't been attending. I can't remember when those start.
6 p.m.
6 o'clock, the same. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? We are 7:20 now. We still have some time. All right. I don't see any. And thank you so much for being patient with me for my first lead. And apology for any misspelling names. And
Yusuf, amazing job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for leading us.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So we have to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Norris and Mr. Winchester, other hands go up.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate with a show of hands. Thank you so much. We adjourn at 6:21. Again, I want to remind you the next meeting, which is going to be February 17, 2022. And thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you, Yusuf.
Chair Youssef.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.